Hi, this is Toby Jepson of Wayward Sons, and I am also a presenter on Planet Rock. And I am delighted to be here with Josh and Reese on Roll Into Metal.
Rolling into metal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to
Happy New
season
Year,
two.
It's
Happy New Year. What is your New Year's resolutions? Have you got any, Reese?
into the better bands this time.
Yeah, maybe you can promote subscribers.
Don't think it's all a shit, mate. Let me speak English, baby.
Yeah, and we are going to be interviewing Toby Jepson. Little Angels was his original band, and then Wayward Sons, and then he's done his solo work.
She don't wanna talk about it, no, she just can't face it right now. You're showing her up till she's screwed up enough to spit out. You might think
Toby's not just known for his music, actually. He's known for being a radio presenter on Planet Rock Radio on Sundays.
He's the one of those voices, I mean, we all know where I meant to like more powerful than that. Yeah, this guy's got the voices. In fact, all the time it's in there, that I mostly right into it.
can't take it anymore. And the moon is rising and she just can't take it anymore.
Where are you both? Where are you two guys?
I'm in Wales, South Wales.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in especially in South Wales playing, all of my all of my rock career, if you like. It was one of the first areas that really accepted Little Angels. The very first band I was in as a kind of as a band that was part of the scene, if you like. So I've got a lot of affection for Wales. I really have.
Really, I want to know about obviously your music, and you mentioned that you've got Little Angels, and then you've got your solo stuff for Wayward Sons, and that's always been a powerful message, and it brings out some emotional core as well. I want to know, is there anything that inspired um you writing now to how you used to write with Little Angels?
The same principles always been the same, that I've always felt compelled to speak my truth as I saw it. And I was brought up in a very liberal household with kind parents who were politically minded and were also generous people. And my dad was a teacher, my mum was a housewife. It was all very calm, and but my dad was a fierce um, sort of supporter of the underdog, and went out of his way to be, to help as much as he possibly could as a teacher and all the other things he did. He ended up being a lawyer, being a defense lawyer, and helping a lot of people that were very vulnerable. So I've been brought up in that environment. So when I started looking at becoming a composer, being a songwriter, that was one of my sort of desires, that I didn't want it to be frivolous. I didn't want it just to be about nothing. It needed to have a message always for me. And that partially came out, I think, apart from my home life, it was driven by my experience at school, because I went through that the period of time I was at secondary school was from 1979, I think, 79 through to 84, I think. And it was a terrible period for Britain, in my opinion. It was the Thatcher years. Um,
Yeah.
there was a lot of you are exactly right. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of selfishness. It felt oppressive, and it felt like things were changing, not for the better. And also, I was badly bullied at school psychologically, and I went to school in a very small town on the northeast coast of England near Scarborough, a little town called Filey, and inevitably, because that environment was very insular, unfortunately, I experienced a lot of difficult stuff at school. And so those things all combined drove me to want to talk about the experience of that, my experiences of that, how I could then focus myself on the world and how to go forward with those things. And also a big part of it was to try and recognize other people that were marginalized and not given a voice. And so that has been very much a driving principle of my songwriting. So that remains in Wayward Sons. It remains in this new material I've just released. It's gone all the way through my career, and I make no apology for it at all.
That's great. That's great.
Yes, that answer kind of that resonates with all of us who like to listen to rock and roll. So it embraces their spirit, isn't it?
Exactly. I think that's the thing, Reese, is that I think with rock and roll music, guitar music, is it has a certain level of energy. I'm sure you guys agree that it
Yeah, definitely.
exists in it from the very nature of this, not just the sonic landscape, but there's a kind of principle about rock and roll which was based in the idea of freedom. That what it did for young people when it first emerged in the sort of late 50s is it gave young people a platform to be to discover themselves, specifically after the obviously the terrible nature of what happened with the Second World War. So there was a kind of that was always the sort of instinctive urge of a lot of young musicians, was to say, look, we're here. This is our world as well. We want to talk about our things. What do we worry about? What are we concerned about? How do we move forward? How do we help to develop ourselves, etc.? And I think that guiding principle has always been in place. And I think when you get into rock and roll and you get into guitar music, the energy contained with it only heightens that sense. And so there's a sort of, for me, there's always been that feeling. I mean, I've got eclectic tastes, but there's a reason why I like the sound of the clatter of guitars and drums. It's sort of somehow it somehow supports the energy in my soul, if you like. So
Mate. That makes the hairs on my neck stand up. Pretty saying I'm such an incentive to do it.
yeah, exactly, yeah, precisely. So yeah, it's been a kind of I think it's been a very interesting journey for me. With all the artists I've worked with and worked for. And it continues to be. I mean, I don't think you ever stop learning. I think that's the one thing I would say about being a writer and being in a band, is that every day's a school day, and it should be. Life is difficult in all kinds of ways, and it affects us all in different ways. And the great thing about music, I think you'll agree, is it's a kind of cure for it in a way. You can disappear into music, can't you, sort of thing, and it can take away the pain of whatever you're going through. So I think that's a kind of really important. That's been definitely been an important element for me.
And with because I've been going through your backlog and pinpointing out really good stuff, especially with your early work with Little Angels. But when I remember this was like a couple of months ago, and I asked Alexa to play Little Angels on Spotify, and it basically played Old MacDonald, and that was the first song. I was like, what's going on? So I think you need to look at the profile of Little Angels on Spotify. The first song is actually Old MacDonald. I don't know how it's like linked in. I think it's been like a hack with Anthrax before, when you ask Alexa to play Anthrax, and then it just it played like this very poppy song, very very based, and I was like, what is this? This ain't Joey, this ain't Scott. Like, what's happened? Like,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
brilliant.
we've come across this, and it is a source of great hilarity. I mean, I think part of the problem is that our record label that we were involved with back in the day, Polydor, they haven't really got their finger out really, and they own all the copyrights of the song still. You see, so we don't really have much of a say about what's uploaded and what's been put onto Spotify, and a lot of our catalog isn't even up on Spotify, which is very frustrating. We keep saying to them, look, what's the point of having this stuff stuck in a cupboard somewhere? You might as well allow it out, but we don't own it. Therein lies the rubber. Being part of a major record label is actually you give yourself away completely to these people, and they can sort of control it, sort of thing. So it is a source of frustration, got to be said,
Yeah, I bet it is as well because obviously, you've when in terms of like with obviously Little Angels and then now Wayward Sons, I guess you've seen a drastic change within physical media and now digital, and how it affects you. But then obviously that vinyl is getting bigger and stronger again now.
Yeah, no, it's a kind of it's been a really interesting process for me because yes, you're right. When Little Angels got our record deal, it was at the height, arguably, of the success of the British music industry. It was when everything was changing from vinyl to CD, so there was a huge amount of money flushed through the system. They were signing everything left, right, and centre. But what the record industry didn't anticipate was the power of digital. They didn't anticipate that the internet was going to take over. In fact, they poo-pooed it and were very arrogant about it. And as a result, the music industry is now on the back foot because there's no going back. So it's a kind of strange thing for me because I don't recognize the music industry in the way that I entered it. But what I do recognize is the freedom that the internet has brought to artists is really important. Now, I don't think it's all good, though. I have to say that it's not all fantastic that everyone can make music and issue it. You know what I mean? I think it's okay on one level. Of course, anyone who's got the idea and the impulse and wants to make music, of course, everyone should have the opportunity. But one thing that did work with the old major label system was there were kind of gatekeepers. There were people that spent their time trying to find the next big thing, or trying to find the cool artists, or trying to find those bands that were really together, or those artists that were really together, that they could then help take to the next level. Because when you got signed to the record label, and it's still the same today, those labels, because they are behemoth creatures, they're huge organizations. They have the funding, they have the ability to be able to spend their way into success, and that's absolutely the facts. If you go in, Little Angels is a good example. When we first got signed to Polydor, I don't think we were really good enough to get signed. If I'm being totally truthful, I don't think we'd done enough work. But what we did have was a spirit, and they liked the spirit that we had. But they spent an absolute fortune on the band over a period of about 5 years. And without a doubt, that level of funding is a massive part of the reason why we were successful. Because it doesn't kind of matter how successful you are. This day and age, you could write the new Sergeant Pepper, you could write the new, I don't know, Pump by Aerosmith, and nobody would hear it if you don't have the right source, the resources behind you. You don't get your internet and social media stuff set up correctly. That's the problem. We're now in a situation where it's almost like white noise. There's so much music out there that it's hard to discern the good and the bad half the time. It's just everyone's doing it. So there's a kind of slight contradiction in terms there, that the freedom to make music doesn't often mean that you're getting the best music. And so there's a sort of sense of how do we manage that? Well, the only way you can manage it is by keeping working, developing the music. Because half the time I think, and I don't know what you guys think about this, but I think that often with the modern world of the music business, the last thing that people think about is the music. They think about the marketing, they think about the website, they think about the clothes they're wearing and the video they're making or whatever. But they don't really spend, what I think they should be doing is more time on the actual music, developing the actual art form. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
so maybe people tend to look at the pictures first. So like, they look at the CD cover and they think, oh, it's cool, so I'll buy that. So it's not necessarily about the music first.
mm,
It should be about the music first.
Yeah, well, it's exactly, and all of these things. The problem you have, the problem you have with this is that the music industry, when it first evolved, was full of very intuitive people that had come from a background of managing bands. They'd been in bands themselves. They were record producers. They were at the very forefront, and so they understood the environment. The problem with the record industry now, in my opinion, is it's twofold. It's largely run by people who are interested in nothing but money. They're not really interested in the art form. They're just interested in whether it's going to make them any money, or it's run by complete amateurs, and that has a kind of two effects. It has a very positive, naive, healthy effect where anything goes and you can do whatever you want. But also the problem with that is that it can't be managed, and so the management of it then falls away and falls into some difficulty. So I think there is a kind of real struggle here. Um, but at the same time, I'm the eternal optimist, lads. What I think is, if you're good enough, if your music develops well enough over a period of time, and you keep going and you keep working hard, that music will eventually rise to the surface. Because you know what? Bands fail and artists fail when they give up, and often people give up because it seems so hard to achieve something. But I'm living proof of, if you keep going, you can maintain it, you can develop, you can build an audience. And I think that's the truth of it. A lot of people spend their time in bedrooms making music on computers and don't actually ever get out and do a gig half the time, So I think there's a bit of that going on. So it is difficult, but it isn't impossible. It isn't impossible.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, the young artists will certainly want the guys of your generation as an influence. So I can say to you, what is your influence?
Yeah, my influences. Wow. Honestly, Reese, they are so wide and eclectic. And I've never really felt that I want to put a bracket around music. I think that's a real mistake. And I think the trouble
Yeah.
is that when you say, "Oh, I'm into metal," or "I'm into rock," or "I'm into soul," or "I'm into rap," what you're really saying is, "I'm part of a tribe." Well, I've never felt like I'm part of a tribe ever. I think there's two types of music. There's music you like and there's music you don't like. And I'm not interested in trying to define what that is. What I react to personally is the passion and the instinctive understanding of communication through the art form. And so if someone communicates an idea to me that really touches me, then I'm going to like that piece of music, irrespective of what it actually sounds like. That's my guiding principle. So I like everything from the Beatles through to Metallica, through to ELO. I love Ian Dury and the Blockheads. I love Blondie. I love the Foo Fighters. I love, Queens of the Stone Age. Great bands, great songwriters. That's really what it comes down to me. It's like, if you can write a great song, then you're going to have a fan in me. That's what it is. I get bored and I get very disinterested these days with the kind of male bravado-ness of hard rock and heavy metal. I find that off-putting personally, because I don't think it means anything. There's no integrity in just being a loud band. There's no power in volume, actually. The power comes from the things you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that in terms of Wayward Sons, especially the first debut album that you've got, um, that particular album, I think is my favorite in your discography. And the reason why I think it is because it touches a lot about be it like doing better for yourself.
Hmm.
And I really like that element to it. And you're right, I think some bands just want to get famous, so they'll just go out there and and like sell merch and make cool designs, and then thinking that they're gonna be big, but then they don't play that
Hmm.
soul in that music no more.
I think that's true, and I, and maybe it's, maybe it's always been like that. But I just think because we're in a world of social media where the moment you record something, the moment you release something on Facebook or through TikTok or however you do it, it's instantly out there, isn't it? It's instantly there. When I was a kid, we could hardly record. We could hardly afford to record anything. We used to save our money. We used to go and we all had little jobs and we'd all go and save our money to go into a studio. Sometimes that would take us months and months and months to get to that point. Then we would go in a studio for 2 or 3 days. We'd record some music. Then we used to think to ourselves, well, how the hell are we going to get this music out? No one's going to hear this. So we used to produce it on cassette and we used to sell it at our gigs and things. And so it took a long, long time for that music to drip down and for people to understand it and to even discover it. Now, here's the thing. The great thing about that is that in that period of time it took us to write that music, to go and physically record it, to understand it, have that experience, we were developing not only as musicians, but as human beings and as people. And we understood what we were trying to achieve. And so that protracted period of time actually was a real benefit. I don't think actually having the facilities to record music instantly is necessarily a good thing because actually, right? Because sometimes the first thing you record is flipping rubbish, So you've got to then take some time to develop it and rewrite it and re-look at it and re-examine it. I think people are too quick these days to issue stuff, and more often than not, it's just not ready to be listened to.
Yeah, no, and you're right because it's just rushed, and I feel like another thing to add to that is that I see a lot of singles these days, like a lot of like full singles before the album comes out, and then I speak to like band management, and then they're like, "Oh, well, that's the way it goes these days." I'm like, "Well, you're just chopping off half of the album, when the album comes out, no one wants to listen to the filler, or no one wants to listen to the other parts because they already know the 4, 5 top songs that they like."
No, I think that's definitely true, and I think it's a bit of a sticky wicket because the sadness of it is, I mean, that is the way that everyone does it, and so there is a problem there. But you're right. I mean, I think in the old days, what was great about the album campaign is that you got one single, and then everyone was anticipating what was going to happen when they got the record, right? So
Yeah,
we were all excited. Oh my God, what's the album going to be like? And that was definitely part of the whole process. But of course, social media is so quick. The problem is if you're a young band or you're a new band specifically, and you're trying to get people interested in your music, if you put a piece of music out, you're lucky if that piece of music lasts you a couple of weeks before people are bored and they move on. And so that's why people are releasing music endlessly because they'll go, right, okay, well, I've had that one out for a couple of weeks. Now let's put something else out. Let's keep people interested. But you're right, it waters the process down. And eventually, by the time they come to release an album, it's like, well, we've heard all this, haven't we? What do we do now? No. So,
yeah,
and I think it is a difficult, it is a sticky wicket. It really is. It's a difficult thing to know how to release properly these days. I mean, this new music I'm putting out at the moment for my Lookout album collection, I'm putting it out in 3 batches. I'm putting it out like the first one's just about to be released. In fact, people are just getting it, dropping onto their doorsteps today. That's got 6 songs on it. The next one, which will be coming in January, is going to have 7 songs on it, and then the one in April is going to have 7 songs on it. So you're going to get the whole of the album, 20 songs over a period of about 6 to 8 months. So it gives you a chance to absorb the music. And okay, I'm old school, I'm an old fart who's been around for years. But the reality is that I know that people value things when the quality of it's high, when the material's good, when you're giving them plenty of stuff, where there's lots of things to look at, when there's lots of things to read. It's not just a quick piece of music and then you're out the door. So
yeah.
I think it's important to, and a lot of this is to do with maintaining a connection to your fans, because I think the fans are everything. Without fans, there are no bands and all that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
So when it comes to naming the band, okay, in Wayward Sons, I mean, what's the story behind that? When did you name it Wayward Sons?
It comes from 2 sources. I mean, I'll tell you a little story. How long have you got? Because I don't want to bore you to death.
No, no, we've got a long time, but I wanted to ask you my little theories first of all, because I think I was speaking to Reese about this earlier, thinking, right, does it either come from Kansas Carry On Wayward Son, or does it
Oh,
actually come from you were son with Little Angels kicking up dust, which actually says we original Wayward Son.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay. Well, you've been great investigators because both of those things are true. So, so the story goes, and this is totally true. When I was about 15 years old, I was 6 foot tall, and I had long hair, and I could easily pass for sort of 18, 19 years old. And so I started to go out to rock clubs without my parents knowing, of course. And the local rock club that I went to was a place called Victoria's nightclub in Scarborough. Now, it was a very notorious rock club. It was the whole of the town was into rock and roll. I mean, that was the great thing about Scarborough is everyone had long hair, everyone was into Purple and and Sabbath and all the rest of it. So I got as a young teenager, I got involved with a lot of these people in the town, and it was great. It was a great scene. Everyone was really friendly. There was no problems at all. But they always used to go to this rock club and it was on a Tuesday, bizarrely. So one Tuesday, I decided I plucked up enough courage. I told my mum and dad I was going to stay at my mate's house, but actually I was going to go to the club. And I went to this club and I paid me £2 to go in. And as I was walking into that venue, I had my heart in my mouth because I thought, well, they're going to discover me that I'm too young to come here. But as I was walking into the venue, "Carry On My Wayward Son" by Kansas was playing on the stereo on the PA, right? And it just for me I had never heard that song up. I hadn't heard that song up until that point, and it completely bowled me over. And it was like a moment of clarity. I thought, I'm supposed to be here. This song really means something to me because that song, "Carry On My Wayward Son," is a song of deliverance. It's about making your way in the world, doing what you want to do, endeavor, trying your hardest. And so it really resonated with me. So when I wrote "Kicking Up Dust" with Little Angels, I remembered that experience and I paraphrased that line in the song. And so when it came to sort of forming a new band, there was no other name I had on my lips. I just thought, I've got to call this band Wayward Sons because it goes back to that very first impulse I had when I was 15 about wanting to be in a band, wanting to do what those guys were doing in Kansas, doing that song. And it really, it made such a lot of sense to me. And so that's the reason. And so, it means a lot to me that, that title, that song really means a lot to me. So well done for figuring it out.
It was mad because I'm a very lyrical person. Like I read lyrics and stuff. Well, as you probably know, is that when it comes to death metal and black metal, because that's what I listen to a lot. You've got to like, read the lyrics to understand a lot of growls as well. So yeah, I'm a very lyrical person. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And lyrics are everything for me. I mean, I've always been the most important thing about a song, as far as I'm concerned, is the lyrics. It's what you're talking about. What's the subject? What's your point? It's what comes out of your mouth. It's what comes out of your heart. It's what comes, it's what manifests itself as the message. And so the lyrics have always been absolutely forefront for me. And I am dyslexic. I'm unfortunately, at school, I was an undiagnosed dyslexic. And so for years, I couldn't read or write very well. In fact, I kind of kept it secret to myself. And I used to read, well, I used to look at comics. That's why I got into comics, because comics were vibrant and fulfilled my imagination in the face of the fact I couldn't even read the words. And this is when I was 11, 12 years old, so it was difficult. And I struggled a lot with that, and it became a real problem all the way through my schooling. But what wasn't a problem was my imagination, because the pictures in things like the Tintin annuals and the Asterix books and or the Marvel comics and the DC comics I collected, they fired my imagination to a point where visualization of things became everything to me. And it was only weirdly joining a band where I had to start writing lyrics, where I was the songwriter, that I had to face the fact that I essentially had to teach myself how to properly read, how to properly write. And I sort of did. I mean, I could kind of basically do it by that point. I mean, you know, wouldn't have got through school, of course, but it was a struggle. But since then, words have been really important to me. I love words. I love language. I love connecting words together and finding the hidden meaning and creating interesting sort of images through words and how it affects somebody's perception of the song. So all of those things are really, really important to me. So I am the same. I think lyrics are absolutely everything, really.
So obviously we've talked about um Little Angels and stuff, but in terms of when you're deciding to do a Wayward Sons song or a solo song, um, do you know straight away that's going to be a good song for for your solo stuff, or do you just go, I'm making a Wayward Sons album, I'm just gonna focus on that, or do you just like write stuff down and you're like, wonder what it goes for?
Well, it's a kind of combination of things. I think with something like Wayward Sons, it is a very specific type of project. It's two guitars, bass, and drums, you know, so there's a sort of sense about what that is. And when I formed Wayward Sons, it was to be a hard rock band. I wanted to sort of do all the things that I loved with guitar music, very specifically in the hard rock genre. So my sort of like principles and the bands that I was kind of using as a benchmark were Aerosmith and you know and sort of I guess bits of AC/DC, you know, the kind of classic stuff. It was very much that way inclined, but it kind of had also had an alternative edge to it because I'm very much influenced by the alternative scene, but specifically the post-punk alternative scene from the sort of late 1970s, early 80s in the UK. I love all that movement, Elvis Costello and like I say, you know, the Blockheads and Squeeze and XTC and bands like that. They have had a huge influence on me over the years, as well as a lot of the punk rock. So it was a kind of combination of those things. And it just so happened that the guys in the band, you know, Nick and Phil and Sam and Dave at the time, all loved the same stuff. And so we focused our attention on that. And so that in a way formed the sound of the band. And so when I write for Wayward Sons, that's very predominantly in my mind. I have a kind of idea of what it's supposed to be. I sort of I channel those things. I think one thing about being an experienced songwriter is that you can teach yourself the avenues of approach. I call them avenues of approach. And so you can sort of go, okay, I'm writing for Wayward Sons. I want to write my version of Pump It Up by Elvis Costello, but I want to do it like Aerosmith of doing it or something, you know. So you kind of you have a kind of guiding principles. You have a sort of an avenue of approach. When I'm doing my solo stuff, like this new material I'm putting out at the moment for the Lookout record, that was very open. I wrote all of those the songs that are about to be released over the next couple of months, a few months or so. I wrote them all in 3 weeks, roughly, and I was up 12, 13, 15-hour days doing it. I couldn't turn the tap off. They just kept coming out of me. And what I didn't do is I didn't block anything. If I came out with something like there's a track on the record that sounds like Northern Soul, for instance, you know, it really gave me that Northern Soul feel thing. And I thought, right, well, that's what it's going to be then. I'm going to take it down that avenue. Then there was a couple of very ballad heavy things, and I thought, well, okay, that's good as well, you know. So I didn't stop anything, and the whole principle behind it was where the song is trying to take me, I'm going to go. I'm not going to stop myself from considering the idea of using different instruments or a different approach to the arrangement. I'm just going to let it be what it is, and it's been a joy, I've got to say, because it's completely unfettered. There's no barriers. There's no, you know, brackets. And when we were in the studio recording it, that's the way we did it. I mean, we've got a string section playing on the stuff, a full orchestra. We've got a horn section in parts of it. We've got banjos. We've got, you know, harpsichords. We've got pianos. We've got all sorts of stuff. So and to me, it's been a real joy to do that. And so it does come down to what project it is. I mean, I've co-written with a lot of people, and I've written some pop music, and I've written some jazz stuff with a couple of artists over the years. But here's the thing: it doesn't matter what the genre is, the song's still got to be strong enough. It doesn't matter what you're clothing it in. There's got to be a heart and soul to the songwriting, and that's always been like I said earlier on, that's been the center of my approach. Is that as long as I feel that we're communicating an idea, then it doesn't kind of matter what clothes you put on it.
Do you have writer's block sometimes? And what is that
Um,
like?
do you know the only time I've ever had writer's block of any description was when we made the first Wayward Sons album, and because that was I got to be honest, it was a shock that it was successful. I didn't anticipate it being a success at all because I didn't go into the project with any real big highfalutin ideas. I just wanted to make some music. But for whatever reason, it really connected, and we were on the radio, and all of a sudden we were selling plenty of records, and we were out touring, and we were doing great numbers, So it became a kind of like surprise. And the trouble with something of that nature is that once you're going to get to the end of the campaign, I sat down and of course the record label's going, we want another record. And I went, okay. And I couldn't think of a single thing. I was like, what do I write about now? What am I going to talk about? And it took me a little while. And the thing that unblocked it was because I was panicking. What I was doing, I got anxious about it. And I got anxious about, well, I don't know what to say. But at the time, whilst the second record, I was building up to making of the second record, the world was in a really difficult place as far as I could tell. There was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, like there always is, of course. At the moment, it's not great either, of course, for all the obvious reasons. But I kind of got incensed by the problems in the UK specifically with the politics, and it drove me insane. I don't mind admitting it. I loathe the Tory party. I'm very left wing, and it was driving me mad how the Tories were flushing, as far as I could tell, were completely flushing the country down the toilet, and purposefully so. And so it aggravated me and got me angry. And then I started writing, and all of a sudden I couldn't stop. So the truth ain't what it used to be. Is me being very angry about Boris Johnson and all those, as far as I'm concerned, idiots who are running the country. But the thing is, that's what you need. You have to be inspired. You've got to have an inspirational reason. You've got to have a point. Make a fucking point. That's what I say. And if you don't, then you've got no reason to be making music and creating art, because what's the point of it? So that's my personal view. I mean, don't get me wrong. I admire people who can write simple music that still connects, that has no real point. I mean, a lot of pop music is glorious because it's just joyful. You don't need, right? It doesn't need to have a big message, but that's not me. I have to have something to say,
I can feel the difference in you, man. Like, even listening to your songs, I know you're a different person. So the song, so I love that. I love that.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it's, and I think also because I'm into rock and roll, there's an expectation as well. I think from
Definitely.
fans. I don't think our fans. I think people who listen to guitar music, there's a kind of, and I wouldn't want to say that it's more intellectual, but there is a level of expectation about what it means and how it's been presented. And I think that's always been a very important part of it. And like I say, don't get me wrong, I love pop music when it's great. I really do. I'm the first person to be pumping the air when something fantastic is being written by a great pop artist. But it's few and far between, especially this day and age. Pop music isn't what it used to be. It really isn't. So I think that's a sort of driving force. And you need to be. I think you've got to be in contact with yourself. You have to know yourself. You've got to be prepared to face yourself and talk about difficult things. I mean, this new music I'm putting out is entirely a response to my mental health struggles I've had over the years, which has been entirely driven by the experiences I had at school and also some bullying that I experienced in my professional life. So it's, and that's difficult to face. It's difficult to talk about, and and it's hard to find a way of communicating that without it sounding mawkish or overly sentimental or poor old me, you know. So the skill really with any of this is if you've got something to say, find a way of saying it that can communicate the idea without it being too in your face, what we would call too on the nose. You know, you need it needs to be able to appeal uh, and keep its message, but at the same time, it's got to entertain. You know, I've always been an entertainer. I mean, that's a kind of contradiction in terms in a way that I feel that my role as a musician is to talk about things, but also to entertain, to be a pure entertainer. And I do think that's kind of the thing I've always tried to do. I don't, you know, I don't think there's many of my songs that are kind of too dark. You know, I think there is levels of darkness to them, but it's I hope it isn't a turn off for people, put it that way, you know.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of us listen to rock and roll and metal is a lot of us actually suffer mental health. So
Mm,
for you to say that as an entertainer who helps me give
mm,
my mental health, that really means something. Because
mm,
like metal seems to attract those who are different
mm,
and also suffer in a similar ways.
mm,
So yeah, it's an inspiration to me to hear
mm.
you say that you suffer too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, the thing also, it depends on how you try. It depends what you're trying to do with the music. I've always tried to lend a hand with my music. I've always wanted my music to represent a point of view that I hope other people can understand because they themselves are going through similar things. And it's not all, you know, the thing is, it doesn't all have to be about um, this big support network, but what it can be is just a recognition of life, a recognition of people's conditions, and a recognition of how we're all trying to find our way through this crazy maze, you know. And I think that's the thing that music does the better than any other art form. It has an instant thing to it, doesn't it? If you can get it right in 3 minutes, if you can put a piece of music together in 3.5 minutes that connects to people instantly, that's magic. And I've experienced that. I've experienced the effect of some of my songs on people, and it's 3 minutes of music. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's like the biggest, best magic trick in the world. It really is, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's like medication. I've
Yeah,
always thought of it as therapy and a way of escape as well. Because it really depends on the mood of the day, like what I want to listen to. Like when I'm getting ready for work in the morning, it all depends on how I'm feeling today. Um, do I want do I want hard rock? Do I want classic rock, or do I want some like death thrash metal or black metal? It really really decides on the day, really, and what that day looks like for me. So yeah, no, I think that it is a good drug. It's probably the best drug out there. Have you got any unforgettable moments with the band? Whether that's live or not, like a funny moment or something that is unforgettable.
I think the most unforgettable moment for the band live was when we played Download for the first time, and we played that. I mean, I can't remember what year it was. It would probably be in 2017, maybe 18, maybe. And we played the tent. We played one of the tents at the back of the field. It was the Red Bull tent, I think. I can't remember exactly what, but we we'd got booked. We were booked by our agent at the time, the dear departed Mr. Steve Strange, who was also my manager and he was our agent for years. And he booked us onto that festival. We were third on the bill, I think, as I remember correctly. So we were low down on the day. There was lots of bands above us, um, and we'd come off the back of having quite a lot of success at radio level with Until the End, and a couple of the first Crush and a couple of the very first singles. And I remember that the band that went on before us, we went out to the side of the stage to watch them play. Forget who it was now, but they had a really sort of like, I thought really good audience. There was maybe it's a tent that holds maybe 3,000 people. It was quite a big tent. Say it's 3,000 just for argument's sake. And they must have had, say, 1,000 people there. And I thought, you know what? If we get that same audience as 1,000 people, I'll be really happy because they're loud and they're having a good time. It was really hot. It was a great hot day. So we went to get changed and our crew put the gear on and we were getting ready to go on. And when one of our crew members came in and said, "You're not going to believe it." I said, "What?" He goes, "Well, I'm not even going to tell you." So I just go out and we went out and the tent was so packed that it was 10 deep outside the flaps. It was ridiculous. It was so full. And our agent and Steve, who stood at the side of the stage, and he was so shocked at the reception, and everybody was singing the words to the tunes, and it was like we were the headliner. It was unreal, and the noise in that tent, I haven't ever experienced anything quite like. Not even in my whole career with Little Angels did I feel that buzz in the same way. It was like it came out of absolutely nowhere. We had no expectations about it at all, but we played out of our skins, and it's an example of an audience raising the energy for the band. Do you know what I mean? So we're ready to do the gig, and we were well rehearsed, but their energy in the room, their energy that it transferred from the audience onto the stage, and it lifted us. And I think it's probably one of the best gigs I've ever done in my entire life. And that was the greatest example I've ever experienced of an audience and a band interacting and supporting each other. It was proper community, and it had a sense of overwhelming joy and overwhelming positivity. And I've never forgotten it, and I never will. And we had very similar experiences elsewhere, but that was the moment I thought this band are special. There's something going on here. Yeah. So very, very special moment that.
You must be loving that. Like I think it rouses up people if the crowd is going nuts, it makes you go nuts, and that sounds great.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's a culmination. You're waiting for those moments in your career, really, and they don't come very often. I mean, it happened with Little Angels at Hammersmith Apollo, or Hammersmith Odeon as it was when we played there, when we first headlined that venue. And we went out to a sold out Hammersmith with every single person in that room singing all the words. I hardly had to sing anything that night. It was an extraordinary feeling of gratification. This sort of you're sort of validated, because that's what we do it for. When you're in a band, you're not, you're ultimately, it's a very selfish experience being in a band, actually, especially when you're the writer, you're writing for yourself and hoping other people will understand it. That has to be like that. You can't write for the audience. It's impossible. It's the wrong thing to do. But what you hope is that when you've created that music, when you put it out there, that the audience will understand it and react to it. And so that's what you're desiring. You're desiring your audience to want to be there and really take part. That's the only reason we do it, is to communicate these ideas and give people a good time. And hopefully they go away from the gig thinking, I love that, and I've learned something from it, and I've my life's been bettered because I've been part of this energy. And that's what we do it for, So it's really important because here's the thing, you spend so many years of your life when you're starting out with people not reacting to you. You can go and play a gig in front of 20 people and no one gives a toss. Or you can open for another band and the audience are only there for the headliners and they don't care about the opening band. The amount of years I've done that, in and out of vans, getting in and out with a gear and playing to an audience who couldn't give a toss, it's difficult. So when you do get those moments of recognition and it all lifts, I'm telling you, it's the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah. All right, so you asked the question. It's my favorite question. I always ask it. Just hate it now, to the years of advice. But what does rock and roll mean to you?
It's about freedom. It's about the freedom to think. It's about the freedom to talk about the things you want to talk about. It's about the freedom to go where you want to go in your imagination, and hope that freedom brings some freedom to somebody else. And I'm not just talking about the kind of the simple freedom, the concept of freedom of like, oh, we've all got to live free. I'm talking about the freedom of the soul, the freedom of your sensibility about being human, about taking part in something and being allowed to have that imagination and go somewhere in your head because the music takes you there. That's what rock and roll is to me.
Amen. Amen.
Amen, indeed. So I just want to say thank you for being part of the podcast. Is there anything that you would want to plug before we go? Because I know that you've got a tour coming in May, or May or April. Is it
April time. Yeah, April.
So, yeah.
Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, yes, Wayward Sons are going out to do some shows. We had to reschedule them because I've got this back problem at the moment, but that should be completely fine by April. So we've got the rescheduled dates in April. But at the moment, I'm plugging my solo record, the Lookout Volume 1, the Lookout Volume 1 album's out at the moment. You can find all your information you would need at tobyjepsonofficial.com. And you can buy it through there if you want to. Yeah, I mean, every day it's another day of music and another day of working towards hopefully doing some more shows and seeing the audience and keeping going.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'm looking forward to it. Because I'm hoping that I'm going to purchase the ticket as well. To see you guys. Because you are great live, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got next and up and coming as well. And I look forward to listening to your solo stuff. So, thanks.
Sure, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and enjoy your wine.
Right.
You take care. Thanks again. See
Take
you
care.
again.
Thanks.